In the next few minutes, I would like to show you a bit more about our 8-man software and its functionality. This is our home screen. One of the first things you'll notice is that we've done away with the traditional menu and tab organization because we wanted to ensure that the software is as intuitive as possible. So we've replaced it with a search bar, which is the primary source of navigation with 8-man, as well as some little app buttons here that allow you to do things like create a new user, manage group memberships, and run a variety of reports. We've also got the main sections of our software down here, and that will help you navigate to some main areas like our dashboard, our Active Directory view, scan comparison, or resources view. Now we find that the best way to demonstrate 8-man is to just take you through a few use cases that different types of users, be they an IT administrator, an auditor, a C-level executive, or even the head of a department or business user, might go through in their regular day-to-day routine. So we'll try to show you a few small, quick and easy practical steps that can significantly improve your efficiency and process, and also significantly improve your access rights decisions and ultimately IT security. If you want to get a quick overview of your access rights situation, the best place for a glance is probably the dashboard. So we click on the dashboards. On the left-hand side here, we have all of the statistical information of my system. So we see all of the different groups, types of users, and any of this is clickable. So if I want to see all built-in security groups, for example, I just double-click and 8-man will list them here. I also get some information on OUs or Kerberos token size, so that can be very useful as well. On the right side, you see the different layers of groups. So we see that there are 5 different layers of groups, all nested individually. And again, any of these is clickable. Down on the bottom right-hand side, we have our red flags, which are supposed to show you areas of particular concern. So things like groups and recursions, paths where everyone has access to, paths where AD users have direct access, as well as unresolved SIDs and several other bits of information. The dashboard is just designed to give you a quick statistical overview of your environment and allow you to focus on some of the areas of greatest concern most easily, quickly, and efficiently. If you want to know, for example, who can access a given directory, what we can do is simply use the search bar. So let's say I want to know, for example, who has access to my finance directory. I just type in a few letters approximating the object that I'm looking for, and immediately 8-man will find all of the objects located in its database. And in this case, the question was directed towards the finances directory. So if we want to know who has access to the finances directory, all we have to do is click on the directory in question, and immediately 8-man will show us the location of the finances directory on the 8-man server. And on the bottom right-hand side, a complete list of every single user that has access, regardless of group membership. So this can be individuals that are nested 4 or 5 group levels below that have indirect access through a variety of group structures, or it can be people that have been assigned direct access to the finances directory. On the top right-hand side, we of course have our NTFS information. So if we want to find out a little bit more about why certain people have certain types of access, we can drill down here and see that Ali, for example, is a member of the technical group, which is a member of the domain admin group, which is a member in the administrator local group, and that's why he has full control of the finances directory. The same information can be pulled for SharePoint or Exchange. So if you want to know, for example, who has access to a given site collection on your SharePoint server, you simply click on that site collection and you will get a list of all users and user objects that have access to this site collection, library, or web application. We can, of course, also flip this question on its head. So if we instead want to run a report and say, show me all of the directories that Annie has access to, we can easily go ahead and find the user. We just right-click on Annie and select Show Access Rights to Resources. And we can then see that Annie has access to the finances directory only on the eDollar server. And she also seems to have access to both the intranet and portal on my SharePoint server. So this information can be run from a variety of perspectives. Of course, our search bar always comes in handy as well. If you, for example, want to run a query on a different user, you can just type in some letters approximating that user. We click on that user and we then see the different resources that this user has access to. And of course, you could also run this for a group. So if I want to see all of the members of the marketing group and see what do I have access to if I'm a member of the marketing group, we could run that query very easily as well. So 8man is very flexible and makes it very quick and easy for any user to obtain information regarding access rights from a variety of perspectives. One other thing that we wanted to do is give you a visual appreciation for your Active Directory that allows you to understand aspects that go far beyond access to file servers in SharePoint. So if we right-click on any given object and we select Show in Active Directory Structure, we will see a graphical representation of our Active Directory. And we see here, for example, that Rita is a member of 4 groups. But of course, Rita has a lot more group memberships because, of course, these groups in turn are members in other groups. So we see just by this diagram that Rita has probably 8 or 9 or 10 different group memberships simply because she's a member in 4 groups, which then in turn are members in other groups. We could also run this query for groups that are not necessarily related to file server access rights or SharePoint access rights. So, for example, you may have an Active Directory group in your company called VPN. We then see that there are 12 members of the VPN group, but in reality, there are in fact a lot more. So 8man will show you here on the right-hand side every single object that is a member of the VPN group, either direct or indirect. And so we can get a complete list of all the different nested group memberships and relationships, and we can show this in a variety of ways. But this is exactly the area that the communication usually breaks down. Active Directory can be very powerful, but what Active Directory is not very good at is giving you all of the context underneath and showing you, for example, that there are 3 users who are about 4 or 5 levels removed from the VPN group that ultimately still have access to the VPN network. So this is a visual tool that can be used to effectively manage and improve your architecture in areas that go far beyond data security and reach out into network, application, or database security. We can, of course, also show this in a tree view. So if you want to send this as a report to somebody, you could simply open up all of the different trees here and show individual people the different types of nested group memberships that give people membership of the VPN group. So again, it's a very flexible solution. I can just click on any of these items, allowing me to focus in on any of them. Or I can just go to my search bar and search for individual users and see what their group memberships and Active Directory structure is. Next, I will show you our scan comparison functionality, which I think is extremely useful for 2 main reasons. One is the auditability of your environment, and the second is to find little errors that had unintended consequences in your system that you have a hard time finding. So first, I can decide what times do I want to use. I want to maybe run a report that shows me all of the changes that have been made since the beginning of the month. And I want to run this for, in this case, we'll run it for Active Directory, file servers, and SharePoint resources. We can, of course, filter to only look for specific changes. But what I'll do now is I'll go ahead and hit the compare button, and immediately 8man will compare the 2 different points in time. So our latest scan time with what happened on November 1st. And this will give us a list of all of the changes that were made in our system, whether they were made within 8man or outside 8man. The scan comparison will capture all of them. It will immediately start displaying them, although the scan comparison is still in progress and running. And it will show us all sorts of information from the new value to the old value to what happened on which date and time, which user made the change, and ultimately makes it very easy to solve little problems like some user coming to IT and saying, I don't have access to this anymore and I need it for a deadline. So what's happened? Or I have accidentally dragged a directory into another one. I've lost it. Where is it gone? I don't know. Rather than pouring through logs, The 8-man scan comparison allows you to effectively compare two different points in time, identifying all the changes that were made within this time period. And so this should hopefully help you find some of the problems in your network more quickly, be alerted of changes that had unforeseen consequences, and in general, keep a good overview of changes across time. Of course, all of the information that I've shown you so far is also available in a full reporting suite, so anything we've shown you, we can report upon. And I'll give you an example of an easy-to-run report and also an easy-to-implement process that we find has the biggest positive effect on positively influencing the access rights decisions and the processes within companies. So what we recommend that every client do is schedule a report for pretty much every department, at least the sensitive ones. So I'm going to take this first use case here, who has access to finances, and I'm now going to run a report that I want to send to the person in charge of finance. So my question here is, who am I sending it to? So what do I want to show? Do I just want to show this directory, or do I always also want to show all of the directories underneath? I can focus on only directories with changed rights, and then I can also show a few different options here. In this case, the head of finance probably prefers a user list view because frankly, business users rarely appreciate and understand Active Directory. They just want a flat list of all the users that have access to finance. And now what we can do is we can of course run this report, but more efficiently what we want to do is set up a scheduled report. So we can run this request once a month or once a quarter, and we can automatically have this report emailed to a given email address or list of email addresses. And what we can do after we've set that up is we can then run the report. And what we see happen here all the time is I think the most telling aspect of this existing business problem. We set up this report with our clients, they run the report, and not a half an hour later, the business user tends to knock on the door of the IT department. And they have printed something out, which they hold in their hand. And generally, that is this report. And on its report, it's got a list of all of the people that have access to the directory that they own and manage. And their criticism is very immediate. They say, who are all these people? Why do all these people have access? I don't know half of these people, and I've been managing this department for 5 years. These 3 people are external employees, and these 3 guys were here from a consultancy last winter to do a financial audit. Why do they still have access to my network? And usually the response that IT gives, and the only response that they can give, is because nobody ever told us any different. And it's during this process that you do 2 things. First of all, you improve the quality of access rights decisions because now the business user reviews and the administrator makes changes. But more importantly, you're also raising the awareness within your organization of who is in charge of this process. And so it becomes apparent to the business user that the information in his or her head is required for the IT administrator to do their job. And it's closing of this feedback loop that I think is most important in the structure and setup of any processes in any organization. And the larger, the more important this becomes. So this is just one little tip that we can recommend, which is an easy way of reviewing entitlements. It's an easy way of including business users, and it's a very accurate way of getting feedback from the business on who should have access to what and what changes need to be made. The reality, unfortunately, is the business is very good at informing you when people need more access, but they hardly ever inform you of when access needs to be revoked. And so structuring a process of review is something that's very dear to our heart and something that we believe can have the most significant, yet easy to implement benefits for your organization. The next thing I'd like to show you is how you can implement easy and efficient role-based access with 8man. So what we can do is we can create a new user. And all we need to do is enter a first name and a last name, and 8man will do all of the rest. We have a couple more administrative options here, so we can configure and enter LDAP attributes, which can be used to trigger other processes. We can, of course, do some password management, so enter a standard password, require people to change their password upon first login. And we can, of course, decide to activate an account now or in the future. Also, one of the major features of 8man. So we know, for example, that Jim is not going to join our company until January 1st at 8 a.m. And until then, Jim's account will be created but it will remain inactive. Now 8man will go ahead and create this user account in real time and then deactivate it until said date, January 1st, 2013, at which point Jim will be again activated. But what I really want to show you is the ability to manage Jim's group membership. This, I think, is one of the most efficient features of 8man. You've got a new user who currently is not a member of any groups. And so I could now find Jim's groups by doing some searching here and manually saying, okay, I need to put him in the marketing MD group. But as a form of process, what we believe is the most efficient and also the most secure is that you actually set up some templates. So let's say, for example, Jim is a member of the sales team. And he's got a couple of different roles in that sales team. What we can do here is we can set up templates that are specific to each of these roles. And you can then match and mix all of these templates to come up with sets and subsets of ultimately the group membership that Jim needs to have. What we see all too often here is that administrators say to the salesperson or the head of sales, hey, we've got this new employee, Jim. Who should I make him like? Is he more like John or is he more like Mike? And then you copy the access rights of an existing employee, and that can have all sorts of unforeseen security consequences. So what we recommend is setting up templates. And what you've got here is, first of all, Jim is a member of the sales team. So I'll select the sales template. I have determined previously by talking to the manager of the sales department that every member of the sales team needs access to Salesforce, needs access to a couple of sales and marketing groups, also needs access to Building B and the VPN network. But I can now further classify this and say, okay, Jim is also a member of the sales EMEA team or the sales APAC team, thereby giving him access to certain groups that give you access to a variety of European specific resources. And now I can just hit Shift and select, drag these over here. And then, for example, I could say, well, he's got this membership in the marketing MD group, but that's only temporary for a project. So I can now actually say, okay, I'm going to set an expiration date. And so Jim will be a member of this group until, say, March 31st, at which point his membership in the marketing MD group will expire. And this is an extremely useful feature that can be used for leavers or people who change roles. But I think more importantly, especially in today's day and age, for project employees, for external people that come for a limited time, for consultants that join your organization that act like internal employees, but they're really external. So you need to be even more careful with the access rights you give them. And so having the ability to temporarily assign group memberships prevents you from having to do a lot of cleanup down the road. And so now Jim is fully set up. His account will not be activated until January 1st. At which point he will be a fully functioning user in our 8man system. And so this, I believe, is a very, very efficient way of assigning group membership, of defining role-based access, and of ultimately not just saving time, but significantly improving security in your organization. 8man has many more features, which I could show you, but for the sake of this presentation, I think I've given you a pretty good overview. We support all sorts of systems ranging from vSphere to file servers to SharePoint to Exchange. We also have a couple of other features that I'm not going to show you today, like our global logbook and our multi-select comparison. And of course, we also have some additional modules like our forensic logger, which allow you to track not who has access to a given directory or resource, but who did access. So this is like a security camera that checks to see which users accessed your files and thereby allows you to identify and prevent unauthorized access to actual sensitive files on your network. 8man is extremely configurable. It is extremely easy to install. We can install it on your system in about 5 minutes. The basic configuration takes about 20. It is completely non-invasive and agentless, so it doesn't require any changes to GPO, AD schema, what have you. And as such, it's a very simple, yet very effective and easy to implement solution that hopefully can be used for a variety of organizations in order to improve their security and also the efficiency of their processes. And with that, I will say thank you very much for taking the time to have a look at 8man.